a really high-level source reached out to me with a human trafficking story tip that when I first heard it, I was like, I can't believe this is true. And I can't believe you. And then I corroborated that information. And I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. Nobody was talking about it. I go to Juarez to cover the story where these young women are being lured, kidnapped, murdered, and their babies are being rudimentarily taken out of their bodies and sold to Americans. I cover this story, and this is like the most evil extent of human trafficking possible, right?
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to this week's episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. Everybody, thank you so much for coming back every week. I'm trying to bring you the best guests I can find. And just like we've been doing, I've got a guest on this week that's a little bit different. But it's a young lady who is doing things that if she were my daughter, I probably wouldn't be sleeping at nighttime. It's amazing. I mean, and we're going to get into it, so I don't want to waste any time here. I met this lady, and she's a freelance journalist, just to tell you right up front. I met her through, you guys hear me talk about Mel and Santi in the Southern California Gang Conference, and I'm rocking another one of their shirts today. She had the unfortunate pleasure of having to take a car trip with them. She doesn't know that I know that, so that's why she's laughing about it.
I didn't know that you knew that.
And they continue to talk about that car trip. So, and Mel said, you ought to bring that up. So I'm bringing it up. But
why? Did you think that I was crazy?
No, you were not at all what they expected.
Yeah.
So, and I mean that in the very best way. I mean, they were talking about some of the things you and I were talking about here before we got started just now. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a true pleasure. And if I butcher your name, just correct me. But this is Katarina Szulc.
Yes. Good job.
Well, hey, look at that. Every once in a while, an old man gets things right. But welcome to Game of Crimes. It's a true honor to have you on here.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Well, I can't wait for us to get into it. In fact, we're going to forgo the typical small town police blotter, everybody, because we've got so much to talk about. It's current. It's pertinent. It's pertinent to law enforcement. It's pertinent to politics, to military. Everything's going on involving the United States right now. She's got some insider info. So, but like we always do, Katarina, I want to ask you about your life background. Where did you grow up? Your family dynamics, brothers, sisters, where you went to college, things like that.
So I grew up in Vancouver, Canada. And then I basically always knew that I wanted to be a journalist because I was always very tuned in to current affairs, news, and storytelling. I loved it. I would consume news from a very young age. And I remember kind of tipping point was when Gaddafi was killed. I was in 4th grade, and I remember that being a very big deal and seeing that on the morning news, showing up to school and being like, oh my God, you guys. And everyone was like, what are you talking about?
Yep.
And I just felt, I was very different from everyone else. And when I was younger, I always kind of wanted to fit in. Looking back now in hindsight, I'm so glad that I didn't, because that's just my personality. There was nothing wrong with me. It was just who I was. And I was kind of operating at a very different level than most of the peers my age. And that wasn't just from, I'm not trying to say like I was smarter than anyone. I just had a very different life experience. My mother died when I was very young. And so then it was just my father and my brother and I essentially my whole life. And so especially as a girl, that really kind of changes the way that you see the world and like navigate challenges. And so I've always been very resilient and kind of different than everyone else. So I would watch a lot of shows like I loved the CNN original series. Not really what they are today. Like it's very cultural today, which is cool. There's certainly a demographic who enjoys that, but back when there was This Is Life with Lisa Ling or Parts Unknown with Anthony Bourdain, to me, that was just like the crux of journalism. These were people who were fully immersing themselves with whoever they were speaking to and in whichever environment they were in, telling a really good story, but also always highlighting the human component. And so that really shaped who I am today, like the journalist I am today. And so I didn't go to college or university. I did do like a 2-year program. I would love to get a degree one day. Don't have that, unfortunately. And so when I started pursuing this, I was like, okay, I have to work my way up. And I always knew I wanted to be a foreign correspondent or cover hostile environments abroad because, like I said, Gaddafi, Arab Spring, war on drugs in Latin America were always topics that I nerded out about. Like I just ate this up and I thought it was so interesting. And I always felt like there was some sort of ripple effect, international impact that was typically looked over in standard media. And I was like, I want to be the one who goes there and shows all of it, no matter what the risks are. So I started in local news, and then I was like, I'm going to work my way up and be a foreign correspondent or hopefully get my own series with an outlet. And then I was like, I don't think this is going to happen. And media, by the time I was actually pursuing my career, had significantly changed from when I was a kid watching these shows. It became more, we're like in this digital age where you can go with a camera and tell these stories. It's very challenging to do that, especially considering the nature of what I cover. But I was all in. So I quit my really comfortable legacy media job, went to Mexico and started covering all of this. And it really was like a can of worms because at first I was like, I'm just going to cover politics, health, but you can't escape the organized crime aspect. And when I started covering that, I saw how many people really appreciated it and how much there was to uncover. So that's led me to where I am today, which is I'm really immersed in the whole organized crime aspect.
Oh yeah, that's putting it very lightly, and everybody's going to understand what I'm talking about here as we continue on. Your dad, what did your dad do for a living?
My father was in law enforcement, but he was a corrections officer until my mother died because of the scheduling, right? And he raised us as a single father. So after that, he was just doing like kind of wherever the wind blew him and was very like much of an entrepreneur. So I feel like I also get the gene from that. It's kind of like the nature of freelancing, to be honest.
What does your brother do, just out of curiosity? Is he an adventure seeker? He's
not. We're so different like that. He thinks that I'm actually like a psychopath. He's like,
there's a lot of people who think that about you, I think.
What is that supposed to mean?
Just the thing. Well, I don't want to spoil it because we're going to get into it.
Oh God. No, yeah, he's super calm and we do not live our lives the same way whatsoever. Yeah. We're super close. We're best friends, but his lifestyle is the complete opposite of mine.
Okay. And does your dad really understand what it is you do? And I know I sound like a father. I've got 4 kids. I've got 2 daughters. I've got 2 sons. It's just, and folks, you're going to understand what I'm talking about here in about an hour.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? My father has always known the type of person that I am. And that was great for me because he never held me back. I always had a lot of freedom. If I wanted to go and do something, even if there was a risk associated with it, he knew I wasn't an idiot. And so he always allowed me to kind of flourish, honestly. I think now we're at a point where he definitely knows how risky it is. I don't think he knows to the full extent. I also withhold some of that information just for his own mental health.
Peace of mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing is like always supportive, always. There's never been an issue with that. I know that he gets nervous, but we don't really talk about his anxieties or nerves because I know that he doesn't want to put that on me because he knows that I already have enough of that. Yeah. He's proud.
That's excellent. So I'm going to guess that you weren't a cheerleader in high school?
I was a nerd to the core.
Really?
Yeah. It's so fun. I never played sports. Definitely was not a cheerleader. I went to an all-girls school. So for me, like, I didn't care. I was there to learn. There were no boys to be distracted by or to feel like they were judging you. I would go to school and that was like my job. Like, I'm here to take away whatever I can. I was leader of the debate team. I went to debate public speaking world championships. Like, I was not... Yeah, it was, I would read a lot. Wow. My librarian at the school, who was also my sponsor teacher for public speaking, was my best friend during high school. We would have lunch together. Like, it was a whole thing. And I got in trouble a lot. And I had an issue with authority and with kind of going against the grain was always my thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that is probably fueled that debate side of you.
100%. It was like an outlet for me.
And then the teacher, did she stand up for you?
She always had my back. Yeah, it was
excellent.
She was great.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, wow. And I'm thinking, I was chasing girls and trying to find somebody to buy my beer. It's very impressive. And I don't mean any of this to sound condescending because it's, to be that focused at such a young age and then to continue with that. I mean, I wanted to be a cop since I was about 10 years old, but I didn't think it would ever happen.
Really?
I thought, yeah. And then I ended up being a cop for 38 years, but much to my dad's chagrin, but I think I was on the job like 5 years before he finally said, "Hey, I'm proud of you."
Yeah, it took me a while to win over my father too. But I think, when your parents are harder on you like that, you kind of have to prove yourself. It adds to that grit and to the dedication to accomplish it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and no complaints here at all. I'm glad that mom and dad supported me. And then I'm sorry to hear that your mom passed away at a young age because I can't imagine a dad bringing up two young kids by himself. So hats off to him too. Yeah.
He really walked in on that, very focused.
So you said you didn't get your 4-year degree, but I saw that you went to British Columbia Institute of Technology for broadcasting and online journalism.
Yeah, so I have a diploma.
Okay.
Yeah, I did like it's not like a undergrad or like I have credits, so I can technically go to school and I have credits so I can get the degree to just do some courses, but it wasn't like a 4-year journalism program that gave me like a bachelor's degree.
And it looks like you spent a summer intensive course at USC.
Oh, yeah. When I was 16, I went to USC, did a journalism program, and that was awesome. That was so cool.
Wow. At 16.
Yeah. It was like a summer program, and my professor for that course he gave me he was very encouraging. It was funny because it kind of felt like he didn't really like anyone else in the class and nobody else liked him. And I loved him. And it was great. And he didn't really seem like he was too keen to be there, but he was keen if you wanted to learn. And I just remember we had to write this kind of one pager. Why do you want to be a journalist? And what do you hope to accomplish? And I remember I just sat down 15 minutes maybe. And I just wrote exactly what I wanted. We go to class and he's like, nobody did this right. Read Katarina's. And I was like, no, that's how people hate you. You don't make friends with that. I wish, I was like, well, you could have just pulled me aside and been like, good job. But to call me out like that. And he's like, I had to. I was bombarded with bull. And yours just was to the point. This is what I want.
So I think right now the word to describe you would probably be contrarian, right?
100%. Yeah, I always had trouble with that. I was in the principal's office in high school all the time. I wasn't allowed to be valedictorian. It was not great.
Well, so did you qualify to be a valedictorian?
I was the most qualified person.
And why did they not let you do it?
Because I did not follow the values of what the ladies of that school should be. Like, they would always say, like, we are instilling you ladies with the values of the sisters that started this school. It was like a convent. And I apparently did not fill that description. I was respectful, to be honest, but I had my limits.
Yeah, it's. I don't know. You set a standard, then when people live up to it, you don't reward them for the accomplishments they've made. That just doesn't seem right.
It's okay. I didn't need it. I've always had a big ego. I've always been, well, you know what? On to the next. It never really, nothing like that ever really upset me, to be honest.
Yeah. Not to stereotype you here, but I think you're fitting right in with law enforcement and special type operators as far as a type A personality.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe.
No, I don't think there's any maybe to it. And I don't view that as a bad thing. I like decision makers. I like people that are focused on what they want to do and they pursue that objective. So it's all good. I know if I'm sounding condescending, I certainly don't mean to be. I'm actually proud of what you're doing.
No, good. It's not condescending whatsoever.
So I want to brag on you here just for a second, because before you ever got into the journalism, as you're looking, you won a few awards, didn't you?
I did, yeah, when I was a student. This is so fun.
Do you want to tell us what they are, or do you want – say again?
I've never had anyone bring this up in a podcast. Like, I feel like I'm going over my life story here. Typically,
we are. This is your story. That's what we're about today. So let me just brag on you then.
Where are you
in 27, I found it on LinkedIn.
I forgot I had that.
I know. I watched some of your Instagram videos, and folks, I'm going to post all that towards the end here, so you'll be able to find Katarina here. But in 2017, she was a silver medalist at the WID PSC in Cape Town, South Africa. What's that?
World International Debate and Public Speaking Championships.
Wow.
I told you I was a nerd.
And you actually went to Cape Town?
Yeah, I went to Cape Town, South Africa, and it was one of the best trips of my life. I made lifelong friends from all over the world, and that we're still in touch today, and I won a silver medal. And I was the first person from my high school to ever go to the World Championships. And then after that, every year, a girl qualified for Worlds. So that was a good accomplishment. I broke the glass ceiling. Okay, now everyone go.
Yeah, that's called leadership.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
It is. Trust me. And then in 2019, you got the, let's see, I'm guessing this is let's see.
Oh, I got the Webster Award.
Yeah. You got the President's Entrance Award at the British Columbia Institute of Technology.
Yeah. Got a little scholarship.
You forgot about that, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's okay. And then the next year you got the Jack Webster Student Journalism Award. Was that from where you went to high school?
No, that was from when I was at the Institute of Technology. Jack Webster was a very renowned journalist in British Columbia, the province where I'm from. And there's an award in his name for a student journalist who the panel feels like would kind of is going to be a successful journalist and has the values of Jack Webster. So every year there's one student in the province that gets that, and I won that. So they weren't wrong. I did stick to it.
Congratulations.
Thanks. This is like a trip down memory lane.
It is. So the next podcast, when they ask you this, you already know the answers.
Yeah, well,
And just tell us, how many languages do you speak?
I speak quite a few. I've always liked languages, so there's I don't like to say this that much, because then people think that like, I don't know, that I'm a spy or there's some weird double going on because they're not used to this. But I think people fail to understand I'm European, right? I'm Polish. So when you grow up in like a very European household, and we spent, after my mother passed away, we spent some time in Poland, you just do learn other languages. It's kind of part of the culture, to be honest.
It is. I was on when I was still with DEA, we went to some kind of conference in Belgium. And this is when I was stationed in Washington at the time. And there was a huge snowstorm in Washington, and the flights were all canceled. So myself and the chief counsel for DEA, we decided to jump on a train, and we went up to Bruges, Belgium for the day. And, I tell you, when I go to Belgium, I have a Belgian waffle every day. There's not a damn thing healthy about it. It's so good, though. And so we're in this little waffle shop, and this waitress comes over. She looks like 18, 19 years old and speaks just perfect English, no accent. And I said, are you from the United States? Are you from England? Where are you from? And she's like, no, I'm here from Belgium. And I said, just out of curiosity, do you speak other languages? Oh my gosh. It was like 5 different languages.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, if you were in the United States, you could make a fortune just because of your language abilities. And she's like, yeah, I'll just stay here in Belgium. But it was common for everybody. Because
in the States, it's not common. So when Americans meet people who speak multiple languages, you guys are like, what the hell? Like,
yeah.
You should be at the United Nations. You should be like working for Mossad. And it's like, no, this is just part of like learning.
Well, I mean, the languages I saw for you, it's not like Farsi or Pashto or Mandarin. I mean, they're good at European languages.
I did learn Arabic during COVID, and that was the hardest one because, first of all, you read right to left, and it's a completely different alphabet. And then there's different symbols that change the entire meaning and pronunciation of the word. I've never had to apply that during work yet.
That's pretty cool. I speak English, a little bit of Spanish, and then redneck and hillbilly. So I speak 4 languages there. Boom, boom. All right. So you mentioned when you got out of high school, you graduated. Did you graduate in 2020?
No, 2019.
2019. Okay.
Yeah, I think before COVID. Yeah, 2019.
Okay. And then did you start a podcast because of COVID?
No, I started the podcast because I knew when I was going to graduate that journalism program, I wanted to have a job lined up. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, okay, what's going to kind of set me apart? And also it's kind of a passion project. So I started a podcast from Vancouver, of course, no drugs. And it was called Deep Blue City. And honestly, like I just bought some gear on like Facebook Marketplace and then would just try to find people. I interviewed a drug dealer, recreational drug user, like a drug addict who was living on the street, like multiple people. And it did set me up for success, honestly. And it was a good learning experience. I forgot about that podcast.
I'm just bringing back all kinds of memories for you today.
Yeah.
And just so you guys know, and being transparent here, Katarina interviewed me on her current podcast yesterday.
Yeah.
So, and we're recording this in late October. It should be out mid-November. So it's a few weeks from now. But so that led into what came next in your career. If you don't remember, I'll tell you.
I started working at a radio station, a local radio station. That was probably the worst job of my life. It was horrible. Yeah. I, from there, went to the CBC, which is the Canadian National Broadcaster. A lot of people now, it's like very polarized and politicized because it is part of the government. People are like, defund the CBC and we hate the CBC. I had a great experience there. I was surrounded by such incredible journalists and so many people who gave me the tools to pursue this career. I learned so much and everyone was so willing to help me. I got to cover a lot of really profound stories. And honestly, at one point, that was like a dream job. I remember when I was in school, I was like, if I get to work at the CBC, like, and I can cover for the national. And then I did all of that, and I was like, all right, what's next? Like, time to start something. Yeah, so I had a really positive experience there. And when I quit, there was literally nothing wrong other than I needed to pivot. Like, I needed to pursue something more. And I remember telling the boss when I quit, I'm like, just so you know, I loved it. And she was like, we loved you. You always have a place here. And that was really nice. And then went to Mexico and started covering everything over there.
And that's the beginning of your freelance journalism career, right?
Yeah. And at first I was filing stories for news outlets, still for CBC, the BBC, Times. It wasn't really, American outlets didn't really buy my stories at the beginning. And I understand why. Like, I was very fresh, I was new. And then also, the way that I was doing my stories didn't really cater to the American audience. So I was working a lot for Canada and the UK. And then when I started covering the organized crime and then I covered the presidential election in Mexico, everything kind of shifted. And Americans were like, we want you. And a lot of people were like, we can't believe you're not American. I'm like, what does that even mean?
You're North American.
I am, but being American from the U.S. as opposed to being North American from Canada or Mexico, it's very different.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know that better than anyone.
We're a little bit redneck about that.
It is different, but, I actually realized that it was great. I don't know. When I started working for the Americans, I was like, this is kind of where I belong. Like, my personality and the way that I work is very much respected and appreciated in the US. And so then I kind of just let loose. I was like, okay, just be yourself. And that started to do really well. And that was the first time, like, because I told you in school, I was always kind of outcast. Then I realized, wow, maybe if I grew up in the US, I would have had a very different experience.
I don't know. I'm sure it's the same peer pressure everywhere. Everybody wants to be accepted by their friends or their classmates or colleagues, whatever it might be. And when you're a little bit different, people tend to ostracize you and look down on you. So I don't know that it would have been any different. And I mean, Canadians have the reputation of being like the nicest people in the world.
Okay, don't get it twisted. I was not bullied. Okay. If anything, I think there are some people who could argue that maybe I did some bullying myself, but it was well deserved. It was not like I wasn't picking on a harmless, like a victim. Okay. It just felt like the way that I kind of operated and the way that I am was not, I wasn't really given a lot of the resources and opportunities to continue myself. I always had to seek it out and kept pushing for it. Whereas I think if I was in the States, people would have been more like, oh, you've got something, here you go. Because when I started reporting for US outlets and then like doing the podcast with Ironclad, or even previous to that, going on American podcasts, I was getting a lot of really positive feedback. And I was like, oh, this is something very different.
It is. And it's I'll be honest. I mean, you and I, we don't agree on certain things, but like I tell people here on the show, you can disagree. It doesn't mean you have to be enemies. You can have the courtesy to listen to somebody else's position, and you never know, you might change somebody's opinion.
Yeah.
So, and so the reason I'm saying that is because I don't want anybody to think that I have you on here because you and I agree on everything.
No,
we don't. But
our whole episode yesterday that we recorded for my podcast was about us disagreeing.
Yeah, and it was fine.
Yeah, of course. I think it's important to keep an open mind. I think a lot of people lose sight of that now because we live in like a very polarized, politicized world. And so I think it's almost like people want to clash with the other side. You're either all in or you're all out. It's like black or white. And people forget that this is a nuanced world with a lot of gray zones. And in order to actually understand how things work and to be able to empathize with people, you have to be willing to kind of change your opinions or accept information that goes against yours. But people aren't really like that.
And I'm 3 times your age, almost, not quite, but almost. And it's a lot of times people will defer to me just because of my experience, but I don't have all the answers. I've never pretended to have all the answers. And the topics, we're going to talk a little bit about them today also, today and tomorrow, but I'm getting a lot of invitations to do a lot of interviews with certain networks right now because of what's going on. And I have my opinions just like everybody else does, but I want to hear the other opinions just because some of these will end up in a debate. And if I know what your position is, I can be prepared to address that. And who knows, I may change my opinion to the way somebody else thinks, but probably not, because I'm getting to be a grumpy old man.
Yeah, you're not at the age where opinions change.
That will take as a compliment.
With all due respect.
All right. So why in the world did you pick Mexico of all the places in the world that you could have chosen to pursue your freelance journalism career? Why Mexico?
Because I wanted to go abroad and cover hostile environments. And because it was my first time doing it and I was doing it all by myself, Mexico, like logistically, was the closest option to Canada if I needed to go back or leave, or I couldn't do it. My Spanish is very strong, and it was one of the countries where I had been following their news and everything, politics and even cultural context for so long that I felt like I had a solid understanding. I knew there was still a lot to learn, but it felt like the best option for what I was kind of venturing out to do, to be honest. Because I would have I wanted to go to the Middle East. Now, as a woman journalist on her own, what the hell was I going to get access to over there? It wasn't the same. And then, sure, my Arabic is good. It's not as strong as my Spanish. And then also, it was something else, and I lost my train of thought. But it was it just didn't seem as feasible, to be completely honest.
And it's not that it's more dangerous than Mexico, because it's equally, I think they're probably equally. It's just that I guess they're, I was going to say they're involved more in open combat, but they are in Mexico as well. You got the cartels fighting each other and the government fighting everybody.
There's fully open combat in Mexico for sure. I felt like I would have been able to just have more access in Mexico because of my language skills, and then also because it's a dangerous place for a female journalist, but you can still get access. Whereas in a lot of the hostile environments in the Middle East, you're a female journalist, they're not even going to say anything to you, give you an opportunity even.
So where did you go to? What was your first stop in Mexico? Did you go to Tijuana or?
No, I went to Guadalajara.
Jeez. Okay. Oh, that's one of the safer spots there.
Well, Jalisco New Generation Cartel, I was like, I think there's a lot of stories to cover here. So I was going kind of all around that area, along different states, and I would travel to different states. And then went to Mexico City, which became the base. And I actually didn't really cover anything in Mexico City because I really enjoyed living there. And it is a place where I can be and just exist. So didn't cover anything there, and then stayed there until now. And now I just go all over, wherever the story takes you.
So you're not affiliated, you're freelance. You have to foot the bill for everything, right?
Yeah. Well, at the beginning, yes. Afterwards, no. But at the beginning, it was like, okay, I want to go cover this. I'm going to pay for all of it, and then hopefully I get my money's worth from the work.
And so you're I guess, self-sufficient now.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at your social media sites, you've got significant amounts of followers. Your content is very timely. It seems to be spot on. It's current issues. It's not so much historical unless you're just giving background information. So I'm guessing the media outlets like that.
They do. Yeah. And it's funny because when I'm offered work from outlets, like I will go on any of them. And because some people say when they find out that I worked at CBC, they're like, oh my God, she's one of those. And it's like, I've been on CBC, on Fox, on BBC, on the Times, Spectator, Rolling Stone, you name it. It doesn't matter where they fall on the political spectrum. I'm there. And I will say the same thing on every single channel because this is what my reporting reflects, what I believe, and the information that I'm getting. That doesn't change.
Very good. Very good. Because that's one of the, I guess, a pet peeve I have with news outlets is they rather than just tell me what the news is and let me decide what I think about it. God gave us all a brain, but when you see certain outlets that will slant it especially along political views, I really have a hard issue with that.
It's hard now because a lot of stories are politicized. So I've always I never wanted the stories to be politically charged and like to just give the information and the reporting and people could form their own opinions. But now I do introduce my opinion. I don't tell people that this is what I think that they should believe or try to convince them. I just tell them what I feel about it, especially because when I'm on the ground reporting, it's hard not to make an opinion or have some sort of emotional connection to whatever story I'm covering. And I think that it's actually fair to say that and share it so that people know the perspective I'm coming at the story from. But when I'm conducting interviews and when I'm doing everything journalistic, I do it from a very unbiased standpoint.
Well, so explain to me how this works, or to all of us. So here's this young girl at 22 years old, I'm guessing? 21?
21, yeah.
When you go to Mexico, did you know anybody there?
In like the journalistic.
Yeah. I mean, did you have you got a bestie down there that says, I'm coming down. Can I stay with you till I can find a place to live?
I had some friends. I have some friends in Mexico, but I didn't was like, hey, I'm staying with you. No.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't really want to talk about my personal relationships in Mexico.
Got it.
Because they get scared.
Not a problem. So now you're there. Where do you go? I mean, you went straight to Guadalajara and said, hey, I'm here. Tell me about the drug cartels.
No, it didn't start with cartels. I was covering health. I covered health tourism in Tamaulipas because a few women had died of meningitis from plastic surgeries. I was covering Lyme disease clinics, you name it. I was covering even like how bison were repopulating grasslands in Coahuila, Mexico. Wherever I felt like there was a story with some sort of interest, that's where I would go and cover it. And then it kind of shifted because I went on assignment to Tijuana and there was an organized crime aspect and it did really well. And so that's when I was like, okay, I think this is my beat. And when I really locked into that niche, I started acquiring a lot of sources and a lot of people that wanted to share information with me. I don't know, it kind of just snowballed. It's really hard for me. I wish I had kept a journal because it's really hard for me to think back at this kind of tipping point that happened in my career where I locked in on one thing and everything started coming of it. It would be good to be able to properly paint the picture, but I was so focused and just doing what I was doing. I don't even remember. That sounds great. Like I do, but not thoroughly, unfortunately. And I think it's because I was like, okay, I need to do this. And I don't know, it's weird. And it's not a typical my story of how I got here and in pursuing journalism it's very different than the norm.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to tease out here just a little bit, because it's, you got this young, cute Canadian girl goes down that speaks excellent Spanish. Why would people trust you? Why would they? What is it why do they feel comfortable telling you things? How do they know that you're not going to divulge where they got the information?
I had to prove myself. Like I definitely, it started small where I would, I'm like, your identity is not going to be shared. And then it never was. And to this day, I have not burned a source. And I also, when I go into these situations where I'm speaking with people who, like yourself, would wonder, why is this person speaking with Katarina? I go in very open-minded, okay? No preconceived notions, really no judgment. And I've always been like that. Like, I don't really judge people unless they show me why I should. And even then, it's more comes from like an analytical standpoint or like a why. Tell me, and I want to hear it from you. And I think people get a sense of that. I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into it. I think it's just probably the way that I am. These people are like, yeah, let's talk.
Wow. That's even in law enforcement, you wonder sometimes when bad guys, I guess you have to earn their respect to a certain degree, but initially, why would they want to talk to me, And you use some of your learned tactics of trying to be empathetic when somebody's committed a crime and things like that. But I love what you're doing. Honestly, I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Have you ever had a case where somebody's told you information, you go to do your investigative research on it, and because you're not, I guess you probably do something online, but you're out there, boots on the ground, out in the field, where these drug traffickers are, these violent cartels, all the different crimes they're involved with. Have you ever had one of the criminals or a cartel member come up and say, where did you find this information out, and threaten you for that?
No, not for that. But I've had criminals tell me they don't like me. And that's not a great scenario when you're literally there in their environment, like they have all the control, right? And then someone comes up to you and they're like, I just want you to know, I don't like you. I don't respect what you do. And you think you can come in here with us, but you get to leave. You don't understand the life. And I'm like, that's exactly the point. I don't live this, as most of the people watching this don't, which is why we're putting this out there, because with more information, there's more understanding, more knowledge. Knowledge is power, right? People should know about what's going on. And yeah, I've been in scenarios like that. I've never had someone say, how do you know this? I mean, I have. I've had people say, how do you know this? But not to the point where they threaten me. I think a lot of these people, like I said, they know I'm a nerd. So that vibe comes off, and they're not really surprised that, oh yeah, Katarina, she knows this, she reads everything, talks to everyone type of thing.
Yeah, but being a nerd is keeping you alive.
Yeah, it's great. Keeping me alive, paying the bills.
I apologize because I know I'm talking to you like a dad.
No, it's fine. This is not the first time that this has happened.
Yeah. I think that because of your reputation with Mel and Santee and the Southern California Gang Conference and the things that you're trying to do, I'm just kind of proud of what you're doing, that you have the guts to try to pursue a career like this at such a young age.
Thank you.
So now you got down there, and it wasn't just drug trafficking, but now all of a sudden your eyes are getting open to a lot of different crimes, aren't they?
Yeah. It's interesting because obviously when this administration designated cartels as FTOs in January, that was obvious. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott had already previously signed an executive order designating them as FTOs in Texas. And it made sense because a lot of cartel tactics mirror that exactly of textbook terrorist groups. And I always said, I'm not going to cover human trafficking. Like, that was my line, because it's scary and it goes really deep, and I didn't really want to get involved in that, and I never wanted to be wrong. That's obviously for any journalist, you don't want to be wrong, because it sets your credibility, and it sucks. Like, that's the worst thing. I always say, like, I'd rather be rejected and I'd rather have people say evil things to me than to get the story or information wrong. And with human trafficking, there's a lot on the line if you make a mistake. But it got to a point where I was putting out so many hard-hitting stories, and it was teetering that line. And then a really high-level source reached out to me with a human trafficking story tip that when I first heard it, I was like, I can't believe this is true. And I can't believe you. And then I corroborated that information. And I was like, oh my God, this is really happening. Nobody was talking about it. Nobody in the US government, Mexican government. So I go to Juarez to cover the story where these young women are being lured, kidnapped, murdered, and their babies are being rudimentarily taken out of their bodies and sold to Americans. I cover this story, and this is like the most evil extent of human trafficking possible, right? And then everyone was giving me so much for this story.
Everybody, like who?
Viewers, other journalists, law enforcement, basically, like, in every category, I was being told, or I was finding out that other people were talking about me and saying, she's wrong, she's an idiot, she's making this up for views. First of all, in what universe would I ever make something up like this? Okay. But I kept quiet. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to address it, because I knew I was right. And I also had this level of compassion that, you know what? There's a level of humanity in not wanting to believe that something like this is true. Period. And then NCTC does their whole press release and press conference confirming all of my reporting. And I was like, okay. And then everyone who was talking shut up. And I was like, yeah, this is one thing, is I'm going to not be wrong. And if there's a story of this caliber, I'm going to make sure. And I did my due diligence to an extent that I worked that story like no other story. It was like, I talked to everyone. I was in really uncomfortable, dangerous scenarios to get information. My anxiety was at an all-time high. And I was sad because I was speaking to the family members of one of the women who was murdered, and they were just devastated. And yeah, it was, and no one else was talking about it. And when you work a story like that, in my case, I sort of become emotionally involved in it, which a lot of journalists will tell you you're not supposed to do. I don't care what you're supposed to do or not supposed to do. It's just how I felt. And you feel sad because this is not someone who deserved any of this. And now a 20-year-old woman is dead and her family is suffering. So yeah, that was when I was like, okay, these guys are terrorists. This label, you know, the shoe fits like a glove. Because that's something I've never seen or heard of before. And I've covered a lot of dark shit, but this was just next level. These people conducting these operations were absolute sociopaths. They have no humanity, no empathy. And what they were doing was for money, but also there was some level of satisfaction. And I had never seen anything like that before. And that's very different than drug trafficking. You know, you're trafficking fentanyl. People are buying and using fentanyl or whatever drug it is at their own volition. I know that, addiction is more nuanced than that. But when we're comparing that to a 20-year-old woman being kidnapped and what was described by police is that her stomach was opened up like a flower to get the baby out. And then she's crying as she's dying to hold her baby. They let her hold her baby skin to skin for 2 minutes, take it away, and then stab her repeatedly in the face and the chest until they murder her.
Oh, gosh.
That's no longer, drug cartels, organized crime, war on drugs. No, that's terrorism. You are terrorizing communities
That's, it's very graphic, but that's the reality of life. That there are so many evil people out there that are just waiting to take advantage of any opportunity.
Yeah.
I don't know if you and I talked about this yesterday, but these organizations, I think we did, we call them polycriminal. Mm-hmm. And that's because they're not just drug traffickers. They're not just human traffickers. They're not just money launderers, whatever the crime, crime du jour. They will make money anywhere they can. And these are the limits they'll go to make a buck.
Yeah. And the reason why this started was because the southern border was shut down, right? From both sides. Mexico did their part. The U.S. did their part. And so they could no longer kidnap migrants and extort them. They weren't smuggling the same number of people and drugs across the border. So they shifted and they were kidnapping and extorting people in El Paso people from El Paso and people in Juarez. And then it, as per usual, takes an extra violent turn because someone has a creative idea to make even more money, or someone notices a demand for something. And in this case was for babies.
Are they selling them on the black market?
Well, it's allegedly illegal adoption. So it's families in the U.S. who want a baby. I'm under the impression that there's still some level of some weird infant sex trafficking thing going on as well. But yeah, none of this is done officially. There were also CBP officers on the payroll to allow this to happen so the babies could be crossed into the U.S.
Man.
Yeah. I know anytime I tell anyone in law enforcement about that, it's like, really?
Well, that's because they make us all look bad. There's so many legitimate cops out there, and you get one or two jackasses that just, it's like one apple spoils the whole bunch, And the media is quick to pick up on something like that and exploit an article rather than telling you the good things that go on.
Of course, but it's very much, the reason I see that, of course, I'm not like anti-police in any sense. Like,
right.
I want to be able to call for help. Okay.
Right.
We need law and order. But I find that when there are individuals who are their responsibility is essentially to uphold the highest level of integrity. And so when that is infiltrated or, they shut down that, it's like the worst thing. Because it's like you are the individual who's meant to serve and protect, and you have this duty for the country and for the citizens, and your actions are doing the absolute opposite. So it's a punch to the gut. It's, come on, you hear, the criminals doing it are bad, but they're criminals.
Yeah, we have a saying here on the Game of Crimes: nobody hates a bad cop more than a good cop.
100%. Yeah, that makes so much sense. Of course.
And sending them to prison is not sufficient. There should be much. You take an oath to protect and defend. You took an oath. I know a lot of people don't think that's a big deal, but it is. If it's not, you need to check your integrity. But when you take that oath, you're supposed to live up to it. And when they tarnish that oath and that badge, I just think, putting them in a prison in solitary confinement where nobody can get to them. I understand why they do that, but you made the choice, there's consequences for every choice we make. If you eat bad Mexican food, you know what the consequences are going to be, good or bad. So when you make that choice, then I think you need to suffer the consequences. And I know people think I'm a little harsh on that.
Some of the best police officers and people in law enforcement that I've ever met, they always bring up the oath. And like that to me is very much an indicator of, okay, that was Bible to you. So, it's more than a job. Like at that point, that's your lifestyle, as it should be, honestly.
It is. And I actually keep a copy of the U.S. Constitution right here on my desk. That's how big a deal it is. And I know, some of the activities that are going on right now might bring our beliefs in certain parts of the Constitution into question, right? But we'll get into that here just shortly.
That was the most American thing I've ever seen.
It is. Well, I mean, it's, maybe I was the odd duck like you were in your school. I don't know. But,
that was very wholesome too. Like, I keep a copy of the U.S. Constitution.
I do. You're the second time I've ever shown this up here. So we've been going a little bit of time here. What I'd like to do is let's take a little break right now. Katarina has agreed to give us a second interview because there's so much more we want to get into, especially about current topics. I mean, that child thing just,
it's the
Katarina,
worst I've ever covered.
It's unbelievable. But you know what's a very eye-opening for people to understand there is that kind of level of evil in our world. It's almost unspeakable. But when you don't speak about it, then nobody's going to do anything about it.
Exactly. 100%. And that's why when I got the tip, I knew I had to report the story. And I don't think that if I hadn't reported the story, especially to the extent that I did, it wouldn't have made the waves in Washington that it has now.
Right. And I want to ask one more question before we break here. All those journalists that were bad-mouthing you, were they in country actually doing research, or were they just somewhere else in a safe spot going, she's full of it?
I just want to say that none of the people who were talking about me in this story were doing nearly a morsel of the work that I was doing to get the information.
There you go. It's awful easy to sit back and criticize people, isn't it?
100%.
So, okay, let's, everybody, thank you again for joining us here. If you haven't checked out Game of Crimes on YouTube yet, do me a favor, go over to YouTube, type in Game of Crimes podcast in the search bar, go down, watch a couple episodes like the one we're talking about today, because this is just a continuing thing of what's going on in our world that I think you need to hear about. And the brave men and women, including the young lady that's with us today, what they're doing to try to combat this, to try to bring awareness and attention to it. If you like what you see, hit the subscribe button, throw in a like, and you can even send me your comments. And yes, I read those ugly comments as well. I know we're not supposed to read them, but I do. Can't help myself. So until tomorrow, everybody, God bless. Stay safe out there.